All right, folks, here it is. Part 2 of Locked On Warriors. This is a live episode that Kylen and I recorded on Monday night, November 21st. We went over an hour and we couldn't publish the whole thing in one episode. So here is part 2 of Locked On Warriors. Here you go.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, here's the trade that I'm going to share my screen here for the YouTube viewers because I have the trade machine open right now. And this was discussed over the summer, but where it's going to get a little controversial is that the player that I think it might be time to give up on, and I love Dre. I love him, but it might be time to move on from Draymond Green. And right now, if the Warriors proposed a trade that would send Draymond Green, James Wiseman, and Jonathan Kuminga to the Brooklyn Nets for Kevin Durant, it's successful. It would work. I wouldn't mind that trade. Now, I don't know if Brooklyn goes for that. I also would get greedy, and I'd also want Seth Curry in that deal. But I think if you add Seth, I don't think the salaries match. I think the Warriors would have to throw something else in there. And that's where maybe like a Wiggins instead of Draymond would make it work. But I don't know if you want to give up Wiggins. He's awesome. So that's where my head's at. I think a trade for Kevin Durant is the salve. And the question is whether or not Brooklyn would be willing to do that, and whether or not the Warriors would be willing to do that because they believe in these young players, even though they never play them or they don't play them as much as they could. What would you think about that trade? Draymond Green, Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga for Kevin Durant. Your thoughts?
I mean, it's interesting. I just don't know where Draymond Green's head is at in regarding his extension because I think that is a factor. However, I will say that I think that Draymond Green has been playing relatively well this season. And looking at some of his numbers, he's shooting fairly well, 55% from the field, which is the best stat line of his career in that regard. I think his points are up from last season. Yeah, he's averaging 7.9 points per game, 6.8 assists, 6.3 rebounds. And I go back and forth about Draymond Green. Shortly after the Jordan Poole incident, I was like, get rid of him. And now I don't know where I stand with him because the starters do just have such great chemistry that I would hate breaking that up. However, what Kevin Durant brings, obviously, offensively would much outweigh, Draymond Green. At least outweigh what Draymond Green brings to the offense as much as he helps facilitate, he's just not a scorer the way that Kevin Durant is. But, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of breaking up the big three yet. I'm not sold on that. I just still think that we're seeing this season that they still have a great chemistry. And that's honestly what's holding this team together. I was pretty low on Draymond Green after the incident, but supposedly all the players have come out and said that he was the one leading that team meeting, the come to Jesus meeting they recently had. He was being very vocal in that. And so and ultimately Steph Curry would have to sign off on a trade on Draymond Green being traded. And and like I said, the big three, I don't know that they're ready. And I don't know that Steph or Clay would be okay with that based on the fact that it seems like Draymond Green is back in the good graces of his teammates and of the coaching staff after that incident. So I just don't know if it would happen. Like I said, I find it hard to believe that Steph and Clay would be like, all right, yeah, send them, get rid of Draymond. I think there is a loyalty there. However, I do think it's time to look at some trade options, and I don't know that I have a strong feeling yet. I'm gonna have to really think on that because I didn't expect us to be at this point this season. I really didn't. I think it was definitely a big ask to expect the young players to be ready to contribute the same way that the veterans did that we lost last season. But I definitely was not necessarily expecting the Warriors to really need a trade to be contenders. And I feel like that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and that's my entire focus is can the Warriors still repeat as world champions? Here's my thing with Draymond. Ignore the offensive numbers because that's not what they need from him, right? You're right. He's improved offensively this year and he's worked on his game this offseason. You're seeing the results in the assists and the higher field goal percentage, but defensively he slipped, and rebounding wise he slipped. And that is by far what you need the most when it comes to Draymond Green. That is what you need. If what you're saying about him in terms of him like bringing the team back together and him regaining his place on the mantle and the leadership mantle, if he's kind of re-earned the trust of his teammates, then I can back off wanting Draymond to be traded a little bit, because that's not the vibe I'm getting is that, like, I don't know. I'm a believer in trading someone before it's too late. Does that make sense? Like Draymond Green right now still has trade value. If you wait another year, because he almost undoubtedly is gonna opt into that last year, he might not have the same value a year from now if, let's say, his game starts to diminish and it continues diminishing. Defensively, he has slipped. He's not the same player. He's letting a lot of players shoot open threes, baiting them. Kevin Dan and I had a conversation about this, and the why of that is weird. It's like, why are you baiting players to shoot threes in a modern day game where everyone's making their threes?
Everyone hit threes.
Bizarre. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just Draymond doing that just to cover up for a lapse of defensive skill. By the way, this trade, you can get Seth Curry if you throw Ty Jerome into the trade. Sign me up, please. So with this trade, it would be Draymond Green, James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, and Ty Jerome. You would get back both Kevin Durant and Seth Curry. That doesn't change that doesn't sway you at all, Kylen?
I just find it hard to believe the Nets would go for that. Like, I really do. It
would have to be a blow up. It would be them throwing the white flag and saying it's over.
Yeah, 1000%. Yeah, I mean, I think that I would feel better about it if someone came along with Kevin Durant, because at the end of the day, if you trade Draymond Green, James Wiseman, and Jonathan Kuminga, it still doesn't solve the problems of the second unit of the bench. And what do the Warriors do in those minutes that Steph Curry and KD aren't on the floor? You know, when you take Draymond Green out of the picture, and Warriors defense has been a bigger problem than their offense this season.
Yeah.
And so, you know, who replaces those Draymond Green minutes? And then who's getting it done on the floor when Kevin Durant and Steph Curry aren't on the floor? And how do they improve their defense? You know, if they're getting rid of those guys and only getting Kevin Durant back, I mean, then you're looking even deeper into your bench that's already struggling. So, I mean, that's my only thing about just getting Kevin Durant back, is that to me, defense and the second unit are the two biggest problems. And I don't know that solves it. And Kevin Durant, while he can certainly score and is a fantastic player, is it enough to outweigh continued defensive struggles and just, you know, completely obliterating the second unit? And, you know, who would they turn to if you also get rid of Draymond Green? And, you know, like, what would the lineup, what would the rotation look like if you got rid of Draymond Green? Who else was on there? James Wiseman and Kuminga. I mean, you know, then who we bringing in off the bench, you know, and to me, that would be just the big concern. Is there a way that the Warriors can improve the bench? Like, that's to me the focus versus picking up a Kevin Durant type. The second unit, just they need help.
No, I hear you. And to answer that question, by the way, the 2018-19 Golden State Warriors, Kevin Durant's last year, they would have three-peated, by the way, if Durant wasn't hurt, and they still might have three-peated if Clay didn't blow his ACL out. That's how crazy it was. That team's bench that year, by the way, just to let you know, Jordan Bell, in case you forgot about him, it's easy to forget, but he was playing big minutes for him. I don't even remember Marcus Derrickson on that team. Jacob Evans III, Jonas Jerebko, Damian Lee, Damian Jones, Alfonso McKinney. My point is, if you have a starting five that is that dominant, where you're throwing Kevin Durant to the mix, and this time you basically have Wiggins instead of Draymond, I think they're going to be okay. I would not be overly worried. A year or two from now, you have concerns. You're starting to have aging kick in. I think they would be fine. You would win that repeat world championship. I'm just throwing stuff off the top of my head. I'm not sitting here arguing with conviction. They should trade Draymond, but this team's bench sucks. There's just no way to spin it.
Disgusting at this point. I like Shane West's comments though that the second unit needs to eat their Built Bars. I'm with you, Shane. We need to send him some Built Bars, man, because we need to muscle up a little bit.
And no cap rights that they would want pull off the top. I think maybe you would have to consider that. I mean, if it's pull instead of Kuminga, I don't want to give up like that much, but if you want to win a world championship, Dub Nation, I don't know if this bench cuts it. There are free agents out there. I mean, like I said, Dwight Howard, I think would make a huge difference. I do not understand why they have such an aversion to him, but and then Gilbert writes, let's like going to GameStop and making a wild video game trade proposal, a PS2 and Grand Theft Auto 3 for $20. I mean, but the reason why I think the Nets might go for it is just because they would flip Draymond Green. I think there's like a 2-month not moratorium, but 2-month like probationary type period where after they acquire him, they have to hold him for 60 days or something like that. And then they could flip him again. And I'm sure there are a lot of teams out there that would love to have Draymond Green. And if they're going to rebuild, I could see them being interested in Kuminga, Wiseman, or Poole, 2 of those 3. I think it's plausible if the Nets decide they're going to rebuild, because they would then trade Kyrie Irving. They would just blow that whole thing up. But I just don't know what the Warriors are going to do. I don't know what the plan is, because we're now 18 games in. I think a lot of people originally, the patient folks out there, were saying, let's give it 20 games. I said 25. We're 7 games away from that. And Klay Thompson has showed me that he can still play. The Rockets game proved that. But this bench is not good. And I don't know what the Warriors were thinking again when they saw Bielitsa leave, when they decided not to match Gary Payne II's offer from the Trailblazers, when they decided not to give Otto Porter Jr. anything more than a vet minimum. I don't know what they were thinking by not replacing him. I know Dante DiVincenzo is good, but he doesn't compare to any of those guys. JaMychal Green doesn't compare to any of those guys. And I just don't understand what's going on. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. And by the way, Nick J writes the joke who played on the Krug show. Kylen, in case you missed this, the other night, Kruger was off, and so Ryan Smith and Dan Cochimilio were filling in as hosts, and it was a bit. I didn't really bail on them, but I went in there and was like, "Where's Larry?" And they were like, "Oh, he's not hosting tonight." And I was like, "Oh, I got to go walk my dog. I'll be right back." And I just left. But it was a bit, folks. It was a bit. I wouldn't disrespect him like that. But yeah. Anything else, Kylen?
The positives from the last 2 days. I mean, the number one positive to me is that Klay Thompson hopefully can get back into form if he stops forcing it and starts playing more team basketball, letting the game come to him and taking smarter shots and utilizing a better shot selection, which is what we saw last night. And if the Warriors continue to get that kind of production from him and the Splash Brothers are truly back, that's great. That's a great sign for the Warriors moving forward, because I think that Klay Thompson's struggles have been a reason why the team has struggled this season, and has been a key factor in several of the losses. So that's a positive. The negative, I think we saw the second unit on display tonight, and it kind of just reaffirmed what we've already been saying, is that the depth isn't there with this year's team, and the second unit doesn't have it figured out at all. And to me, that was evident tonight, even as many of these young players got more minutes. The big question mark is, can they get there? And if not, what moves are the Warriors going to make in order to try to elevate this team to being championship caliber? Because if the Warriors post game were to start tomorrow, I don't think the Warriors would be ready to make a run for a title.
Not tomorrow. Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. No. So I'm just saying. So like you said, at what point is it been long enough in the season where you can make a fair evaluation? Like, this is what the team is at this point, because you were saying 20 games, 25 games, whatever. And I guess I would pose that question, to all of our listeners or viewers is, at what point is this what we see is what we're going to get from the Warriors, and that changes need to be made? Because I feel like 20 games, 25 games is coming up to the time where that discussion needs to be had. So I'll be very curious to see, there's no reason not to trust this front office because they've been able to figure out in the past if they did make the mistake of expecting these young players to be ready and they're not. Now, what do? How do they juxtaposition to try to figure this out and to strengthen that second unit? So, we'll see. Bob Myers is a genius. I believe that. And what will he come up with? I don't know. One other thing I wanted to mention is how about the Kings? Sorry, this is going a little bit off target, but we've talked about how much the Warriors defense has missed Mike Brown this season. And now the Kings he's got them suddenly on a hot streak. And that was something I was also thinking about tonight and just talking to my husband about the Warriors defensive struggles. I know we've touched on it, Cyrus, so I just wanted to mention it because, I do think the Warriors are missing their defensive coordinator in Mike Brown. And now look at how successful he is with the Kings. Interestingly enough, though, the Kings offense is actually scoring the most points per game of any team in the NBA, averaging 122, almost 121.9 points per game, which is interesting. So who knows? Mike Brown, the offensive juggernaut as well. But I wonder if the Warriors need to consider replacing him in the coaching staff. And I know that's something that I've seen some fans say as well, is really trying to bring someone in who can help figure out what's going on defensively, because defense, in addition to the second unit, has been a problem.
Absolutely right. I want to address a few things in the chat here before we go. It's a long show. I want to say Mike Craven, who writes, your full username is Mike Craven for drums. The Warriors did have the cap space. They had early bird rights on Gary Payton II. They could have actually offered him even more than what Portland paid him. They could not have matched what Otto Porter Jr. got from the Raptors. I think he got a 3-year deal for $21 million, I believe. I want to look that up real quick. But they could have offered Otto Porter Jr. the mid-level exception, which would have been about $6 million per year. So to the person who writes, they gave Dante DiVincenzo 4.5. Why didn't they give that to Otto? Great question. Oh, that's no cap. Yeah, I don't know. And then no cap also brought something else up that I've seen a few people bring up. And Kylen, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. And it's also from no cap. They need to get Ime Udoka to replace Mike Brown. Ime is a defensive specialist. Your thoughts on bringing him into the Warriors culture?
I'm going to plead the fifth. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. There's a lot of baggage now that goes with Ime. Pleading the fifth. I don't know. I think it's worth discussing if they need to replace Mike Brown, but I don't know enough about that situation and what exactly went on that investigation with the Celtics, because literally, like, every day I feel like I see a different rumor about what was going on with him and all these shenanigans. So I don't feel like I can make a fair and full-on assessment without knowing exactly what went on behind the scenes, because that's something that you have to look at. And the Warriors do have such a positive culture, and they've done a good job in creating that. And so I wouldn't want to bring anyone in who could potentially complicate that. And I don't know that about him at this point, based on the information I know about all of the investigations that have gone on with the Celtics. So,
by the way, Otto Porter Jr. got way less than I thought he did. He got a 2-year, $12 million deal from the Raptors.
Bring him back.
The Warriors could have absolutely matched that. That just bums me out. So yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I know they're saving money because of the luxury tax penalties, but that really bums me out. Gilbert writes, better hide your wife from if I was married. Yeah. But yeah, Charlie would need to hide you from him, Kylen, that's for sure. That's awful. I will say this. Mike Brown, what he's doing with Sacramento does not make Kerr look good. Like, this is not a good look for Kerr to see your assistant go to especially a downtrodden Sacramento Kings organization that has not had success for 20 years. And in year one, they're outplaying the Golden State Warriors. Not a good look. But that is the obvious thing for why the Warriors defense sucks, is that they lost their defensive coordinator. I'm a little baffled as to why Ron Adams is not being looked upon more. I mean, he was Kerr's primary defensive specialist in the early goings of the dynasty. He's still a part of the team. He's taken on more of a part-time role in his advanced age. I think he's like 75, 76 now. But yeah, I mean, look, the good news is that the Warriors are so good, at least they're starting five, that they could. It would be long odds, but they could overcome all this. They could overcome this horrible bench. The young players, if they actually get the reps instead of Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb getting minutes, if the young players actually were getting minutes throughout the season and developed enough, yeah, there's still hope. Like, I'm not saying I'm not literally saying doom or gloom, but this bench, it sucks. I could use a thesaurus to come up with a lot of different words for sucks, but you get the point. It's just, this is not good. And, they better turn this thing around sooner than later because, unfortunately, attitudes, as you know, Kylen, are contagious. Momentum is a real thing, and they don't have that. But they also have Stephen Curry. They also have Klay Thompson. Andrew Wiggins is a stud.
Dude.
And Jordan Poole could hopefully turn it around. I will say this: Jordan Poole is not earning his money so far. That's a lot of money they paid him, and for him to come back with regression is not a good look either. Yeah, so sorry, folks. I didn't mean to make tonight so depressing for you all. Jordan Poole, by the way, in the year is averaging 15.5 points per game, which is less than what he less than what he had last year. So he's got to pick that up a little bit. He's shooting 34.2% from three, not good. 41.4% from the field, okay, not great. By the way, in your opinion, Kylen, before we go, where does Stephen Curry rank in your early MVP voting?
Oh, he's got to be up there. And I need to look at the numbers because honestly, I don't know where he's at numbers wise, comparatively to all the other typical names that you talk about, and Jokic and Giannis and all that. But Curry's got to be in the top three. Got to be in the top three, hands down. And he has been playing insane this season. He's gotten better with age. He's more efficient than he was. And like I said, the only difference, and I've been saying this since the beginning of the season, the only difference we're going to see in Curry this season is that they're going to try to dial him back and be a little bit more selective in how many games he plays. But like the games that he does play, like he's still playing high volume minutes. He's covering so much ground and he's playing incredible. And I think a lot of areas of his game have gotten better. I think he's a better facilitator than he was a couple seasons ago. He's better defensively than he was a couple seasons ago. And so that's been the most fun thing to watch about the Warriors this season.
Yeah.
Hands down. Steph Curry doing his thing. He's top three for me. I don't want to name my top three off the top of my head, but I definitely think Steph is up there. And at this point in the season, high in the conversation.
Yeah, I think Jason Tatum's got to be in the discussion as well. David Kennedy, by the way, writes, Cyrus, do you just not see how clueless the young guys look? I don't think Moses Moody looks clueless. I think that's a stretch in terms of a label you're going to put on Moody. I don't think Kuminga looks clueless. I think he just looks raw and he just looks undeveloped. I wouldn't call him clueless. And again, he was the second leading scorer in the team tonight with 18. He won me money on PrizePicks, so shame on you for criticizing Kuminga. I'm being facetious slightly there, but look, here's the thing: for the people who are criticizing the young players, right? And you're adding on to this saying, yeah, and Wiseman. Look, Wiseman's doing great in Santa Cruz. He's had 2 straight solid games there. What's the alternative, right? Because if you're telling me that the alternative is play Anthony Lamb and play Ty Jerome, no, I do not agree with that because they're not producing either. The Warriors are not winning playing those 2 guys. When the Warriors win, it's because their starting 5 is playing lights out and the bench is like doing just enough. And usually Dante DiVincenzo has been like the variable off the bench that has resulted in success for the team. I think the Warriors are actually like 5-2 or 5-3 with DiVincenzo. So what's the alternative? David, you're going to hate on Kuminga and Wiseman. Fine. But again, what's the alternative? What do you propose they do instead? Because you have to develop these guys if you're going to have any success in the postseason. If you don't play them, they don't develop. And there are no alternatives on the roster. Do not come at me with Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb. They suck. So unless you're going to give me alternatives, there is no other option here except to develop these guys. You're right. You're right, David. And I know you're not hating. I get it. I'm playing all your quotes here. It is a reality. But again, who do you play instead? That's what I'm asking you. And there's no answer to that. Okay. So there's no answer. There's no one else. This is the roster the Warriors constructed. So we just have to live with developing these young guys and pray that they come to fruition. I will say this, the young guys are more talented than Jerome and Lamb. They're more athletic than Jerome and Lamb. They're just more inexperienced, but they need experience and they need to play. So that's the only reason why I'm like so fervent in advocating for the young players. I know David, and look, David keeps chatting at me. I wish we could take calls on the show, but the chat's all we can do. I know you're not coming at me. Okay, I'm just letting you know, like, this is why I'm defending the young players so much, is because there's no alternative. There's no other choice. This is the predicament that the Warriors find themselves in. Kylen, I'm going to split this up into 2 shows. Big game, you're right. Lamb, he's decent. Yeah, well, he went 2 straight games without scoring a point. So is that really decent to you? Defensively, he's being abused now. It took like 5 games for other teams to realize all they have to do is post him up and shoot over him. That's all people are doing now. He's 6'5". He doesn't have a monstrous wingspan. Most 6'5" players are not suitable bigs unless you're a Draymond Green. That's the exception to the norm. So I just don't know what to do. Kylen, happy
Can I just go like make some popcorn? I'm just going to enjoy this little dialogue we've got going with our chats. No, I'm just cracking up. I'm trying to hold in my laughter. Someone did make a good point. I'm trying to find it in the chat. Darren Lay said that I like Lamb's effort, and I do think that that's something valid. I point out about Anthony Lamb, and there have been times where I feel like these young players aren't like playing with the intensity and hunger that you'd expect them to play with, and you'd expect bench players to play with, desperate to get out there and to, show what they can do and to contribute to the team winning. And like, that's one thing I will say, I feel like Anthony Lamb has been consistent in, is showing up and playing with a certain level of intensity and effort every night. So if you do want to mock people for saying he's decent, fair enough. He did not score tonight. Tonight was an exceptionally bad. Tonight, yeah, true. I was going to say, tonight, though, was a bad shooting night for him. Like, he had a couple, I'm trying to remember all of his looks, but he had 1 or 2 that were, like, open, and he just, like, missed.
Oh, sorry, he had 2 points. He'd have 2 points. He made 1 shot. I apologize. He made 1 basket.
He was at, yeah. He did?
I'm not hate on Lamb either. I just
been playing in my head. He didn't make a 3, and he went like 0 for 4 or 5. But like I said, I do like the intensity that he brings. I think that he does run down a lot of balls, makes hustle plays hard on defense.
Yeah.
And there's been nights where he's done some things well offensively. And sometimes when he can't hit threes, like he's had a couple nights where he's put up points. Tonight he went 0 for 4, and that's not helping his case any. So I wouldn't say I would say he's decent. I think he's decent, but, not compared to what the Warriors had on the bench last season. Like, if you're going to, you know what I mean? If you're going to try to compare Otto Porter Jr. to Anthony Lamb, like, I would take Otto Porter Jr. You know what I mean? Like, compared to what they used to have. But I don't think Anthony Lamb's bad. Ooh, someone brought up Gary Weatherspoon, and I want to talk about that too.
Good. Oh, Kylen, we got to go. Because that depresses me so much. Like, I really, truly believe from the bottom of my heart that if the Warriors had just kept Quindary Weatherspoon, they would be, oh my God, they'd be so much better. Because all Quindary Weatherspoon wanted to do was be like Gary Payne II. That's all he wanted to do. He just wanted to be a defensive hustler, and that's exactly what they need on the perimeter. Oh, why don't they get rid of him, man? I know why, Kylen.
On-ball defender.
What's up?
I said Quindary Weatherspoon was a great on-ball defender.
Oh.
Given the look of the Warriors defense this season, like they absolutely could have used him just as a defensive specialist alone. Like
a chemistry guy. He was a great chemistry person. He was just like, people complain about, the Warriors' lack of excitement and enthusiasm from the bench on big plays. He was one of those guys. That drives me nuts. Alan Chan, I think, is most reasonable, writes the most reasonable comment. Alan writes, we just need better defense first. True, and they'll develop that. I think they will get better. Then as Clay and Wiggins step up, the young guys will be able to make some mistakes, and the team can still win. Yes, yeah, that's fair. And then No Cap, right, one last thing I thought that was really funny. No Cap thinks that I recommend Bob Myers should trade Curry and give Kuminga the keys to the franchise. Absolutely. Total trade Curry. Great run, but, his time has passed. You can get a lot for him if you trade him now. I'm kidding. Don't do that.
So
All
here's a
right.
question. Here's a question I'll pose to you before we sign off.
Yeah.
And to any of our listeners and viewers as well. So you're talking about chemistry, the defense needing to be improved. Like, if you could, do you think it would be worth, I mean, or I guess if you could go back in time, not that you can do anything about it now, but like, was it a mistake to let go of a Juan Toscano Anderson type? When you talk about like, he immediately came to mind when you talk about like bench excitement, and we're talking about Quindary Weatherspoon as just a bottom of the roster guy who's there, and you know that he's going to go in and he'll play hard, and he'll, you know what I mean? He was a good guy for chemistry and just bringing excitement off the bench. And like, do you think the Warriors are missing some of those bottom of the bench players as well? And Damian Lee, not so much defensively, but like, I know that's something that's come up and I've seen in Twitter discussions, is like comparing like the pictures of last year's bench, the excitement, the jumping up around, and the Warriors are talking about there being a lack of joy. Like, do you think that those players, and maybe not even necessarily what they brought to the floor, but those intangibles are something that's missing as well?
I loved Juan Toscano Anderson as a chemistry person. I never really cared much for his on the court performance. Not that he was like bad, but I didn't think he gave much. But Damian Lee, I don't understand that, because he left for the Phoenix Suns and he signed a veteran minimum deal, so the Warriors could have easily kept him. And he's averaging nearly 8 points a game. He's shooting 50% from 3 this year. He wasn't a bad defensive player.
No.
I don't get it.
You could count on him to go in and make some buckets. Like, I know like he got mocked. I feel like Damian Lee got unfairly mocked. He got a hard time from fans. But there were times where he'd go in and you could count on him to hit a couple threes, hit a couple outside shots when the Warriors needed it. There were times.
I agree.
And then I also thought the bench chemistry as well was better with Damian Lee involved.
Agreed. And here's the other thing. Like, initially when they made that move, I was like, great. Okay, it's time to play the youngsters and give them the reps and you know, start the transition. But what was the point of letting them go if you're not going to play the youngsters, right? Like, you let them go so that you could play Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb. Like, this whole thing doesn't make sense. I really hope that this is all just a bad dream, and in 2 months we'll wake up and the Warriors will be like 10 games more 500, and we'll look back on these days and be like, oh, remember that? Yeah, I hope that's what happens. I hope so. Yeah, because I don't get it.
Rick said in the comments, D. Lee wasn't bad on defense, is flopping apart a defense. I'm dying.
He wasn't horrible, was he? I mean, I don't remember him being like a liability. I don't.
No, he wasn't like great, but he wasn't bad. I don't know. Maybe he flopped.
He's better than anything else they have right now. Oh my God. Yeah, it's a bad dream, folks. Don't worry. We'll wake up in 2 months and everything will be fine.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. The Warriors have starters who know what it takes to win a championship. And every season when they're struggling, I feel like they figure it out. And when I talk about like looking back on a bad dream, I always bring up March of last year, because when the Warriors were on that massive losing streak, Draymond Green was injured. I remember just like thinking and like talking even amongst the media and just being like, I don't know if this year's team has it. And Joe Lacob and Steve Kerr even both said that they looked at each other at some point during that stretch and were like, does this year's team, is this a championship team? They didn't know if the team had it. Yet the Warriors figured it out. They found a way. So there's always reason, to still hope and have faith, because those starters are championship caliber players who find a way to bring the rest of the team with them. And so we'll have to see what happens as far as if the bench gets better or if some people get replaced. But there's still hope, and maybe this will be a bad dream in a month. You never know.
Let's hope so. All right, Kylen, love you. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, because I don't envision us doing a Thursday, Friday. I don't, because I'm not going to be around. Yeah, I mean, you could do it solo if you want, but I'm going to visit my dad. What are you doing for Thanksgiving, by the way? What are your plans?
Just going to a friend's house. I'm going to be here in town. For those watching who don't know, I'm from Chicago, so flights are way too expensive. I'm going to go back for Christmas. I didn't do it last year either. I didn't bother going back for Thanksgiving. Just kind of whatever. So I'll be in town, just going over to a friend's whose like parents do a big Thanksgiving. So they inducted me into their family in the hills of Oakland, and I will be going there. And the one thing that I will say before we, I keep saying before we sign off, but we need to sign off, is that the healthiest Thanksgiving I ever went to was in the hills of Oakland. And that's where I'm going again this year. But like, is it like a California thing? Like, people are eating all this healthy crap. And I was like, I brought a dish and it was cheesy potatoes. And they were like, oh my God, cheese. dairy. I'm like, yes. They're like, oh, we don't eat that. I was like, is this how Californians do Thanksgiving?
Depends on the crowd. Depends on the crowd. I've never had a Thanksgiving where it's all like healthy stuff.
It wasn't all healthy, but it was definitely like way healthier than any Thanksgiving I'd ever been to. So, I didn't know, maybe it was like a California thing. Like, is it, you know what I mean? Because I feel like if
you're gonna see it anywhere, I'd guess it'd be here, right? I mean,
that's what I was gonna say. People seem to be more health conscious here.
Yes,
and also in Southern California than in the South or Midwest for sure. At least.
Yeah. That is fair. By the way, Alan Smilejek is being tossed around in the chat. He's still out there. I never had an opinion on him. He was just kind of like, yeah. Nick writes, "F that, Kylen. Real Bay Area people eat crappy too." I'm with you. Yeah, I agree. I subscribe to that notion.
I've been quizzing people about that. I'm like, is this a Bay Area thing, or did I just go to the wrong Thanksgiving and that everyone was eating healthy? And like, I don't even know. Like, they had potatoes, but it was like a healthy version of sweet potatoes. Like, I'm like, where's like the mashed potatoes, a lot of gravy and like a lot of salads. The stuffing was all like healthy-ized. And I was like, no. There was nothing that had cheese in it aside from the dish that I brought. And I was like, there's got to be something with cheese, people. Come on.
Mac and cheese. I'm all about that. Well, folks, have a happy Thanksgiving. Yeah. Like I said, yeah, we're not going to do shows tomorrow. By the way, I have what's his name? Alchemy. He's like really popular on YouTube. I'm going to finally bring him on. A lot of people have requested his presence on here, and I really want to pick his brain because a lot of his show is about breaking down and analyzing individual players and schematics of coaching systems, and so I'm going to pick his brain and see what he thinks about the youngsters. Yeah, no cap. You say, wait, what's up? Yeah, athletic. Well, yeah, athletic alchemy. Yes, thank you. He told me to refer to him as Alky. So yeah. So and no cap. I'm not gonna touch that. Yeah, just let that go. Anything? Yeah, there's just no point of bringing that up. Anything else, by the way, before we're done? Are we good? No. Okay. Oh, Brandon Terrell writes, "Where's Melo? He'd help out with the drought." Carmelo Anthony. I think Carmelo Anthony is a good 20 pounds overweight by now. Probably he's done. I think he's done. I would not count on that.
Earlier in the season, before the season, I wanted Carmelo because I said he's a big who can space the floor. Now it might be too late.
All right. Well, Alky's gonna come on the show tomorrow. Kylen, if I don't see you again, I'll see you next week, I guess.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. If we don't see you till next week. Have a safe, healthy weekend, all that good stuff, and get fat.
There you go. Oh yeah, I can't. I got to reverse that trend. And by the way, yeah, Mr. 30, Kaminga got his minutes. He did, and he won me money on PrizePicks, baby. It's fun. It's fun. Look at all these names in the chat. Jordan Bell, he's still out there. Pat McCaw still out there.
Eric Pascal did get released.
Eric Pascal's still out there. I mean, I liked him actually. I like Pascal, but anyways, all right. We'll see how this interesting, crazy ride goes. The Warriors rarely make it easy, so it's always a fun ride. Kylen, thank you. Are we good now? Are we done?
Happy Thanksgiving,
bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us in the chat, and we will see you next week. Or at least I will. You'll see.